If you have your Bibles, turn to Genesis chapter 40. That's where we'll be pulling our lesson from this evening, Genesis chapter 40. In Genesis chapter 40, we see where Joseph has now, as we recall last time, he got thrown in jail, right? And now he is in jail, but God is blessing him, just like we read about a little bit last Wednesday. God is blessing him, and while he's in prison, he becomes kind of the guy who runs everything, right? And so the fellow who runs the jail, the chief of the jail, just kind of lets Joseph run everything and take care of all of what needs to be done. And he knows that if Joseph's taking care of it, then it's going to work just fine. And so he puts him in charge of that. Well, so sometime after him being placed there, we have two officers of Pharaoh that get thrown in prison. Right, and so they get tossed into prison along with Joseph. So the guy who's over the prison puts these two guys under Joseph's care. One of them is the cupbearer. Now, a cupbearer is the person who takes the cup of wine before the king or the pharaoh is to drink out of it, and they'll take a sip to make sure there's no poison or anything like that in it, and then give him his cup of wine. Right, Nehemiah is kind of a famous cupbearer that we think about from the Old Testament. And so that was his position. And the other one is being the chief baker. So he was the one who baked all the baked goods, right? The cakes and the stuff and the things for Pharaoh. Well, they both get thrown into prison with Joseph, and they both have dreams. Both of their dreams encounter like numbers of three. So the cupbearer has a dream about a vine that has three branches, and he grabs the fruit of the vine and squishes it into Pharaoh's cup and presents it to Pharaoh. And he's concerned because he doesn't know what it means. But they talk to Joseph about it, and Joseph, his line is perfect. He says here in verse 8, he says, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell me them." So please tell me the dreams. Tell them to me. And so he relates to Joseph what his dream is, and then Joseph tells him, well, what that means is that in 3 days' time, you're going to be restored to your old position, and then you'll be presenting the cup back to Pharaoh. Well, this makes the baker happy. He's like, ooh, he got a positive on his. So he's like, oh, let me tell you mine. Well, the baker's, his thing is he's going to have 3 baskets that are stacked up on his head full of cakes that he's cooked for Pharaoh. But then crows come in and they start eating the cakes on the top. And so, Joseph says, well, 3 baskets is 3 days, and you cook the cakes, the birds come. And what that means is that Pharaoh is going to hang you by the neck, and the birds are going to come and eat your flesh. And so he's like, oh, I don't like that interpretation, right? And for him, it definitely turns out to be bad, because in 3 days' time, right, when Pharaoh comes through, he brings both of these men out, and he restores the cupbearer back to his position, but then he has the chief baker hung, and things happen exactly the way that God told Joseph to tell them about. And this is important because we see that God is giving Joseph a very unusual skill, if you will. But Joseph is very smart in that he recognizes it's not him. Right? When we were talking in class, we were talking about how the lamp is what gives off the light, and it's not about for us to be attracted to and look at the lamp, but to see what the lamp illuminates. Right? Well, Joseph recognizes it's not his skill and ability, but it's God's through him. Right, and even later in chapter 41, when he goes to stand before Pharaoh about the dream that Pharaoh has, Pharaoh asks him, "Can you do this?" And Joseph says, "No, I can't do it, but God can, and God will tell me what's going on." And then through that, he's able to tell Pharaoh about what his dream means. And Joseph is so, I guess, really good, because a lot of times we would want to put the focus on ourselves. We will want to say, look at what I can do, right? Not look at what God is doing. I just happen to be the instrument that he's doing it through, right? And, I want us to think about that and think about in each one of our own lives, what are the skill sets that we have? What are the things that we're good at, whether it's naturally or maybe you've worked really hard at developing a skill or an ability, and recognize that's not about you. God is giving you that. He's giving you that skill, that ability, that resource to be used in his kingdom. And so are we pointing to God through our skills and abilities that we have? When you go and you read in chapter 12 of Romans, and then also in Corinthians, Paul talks a lot about the body being made of many members, and all the members, when they do their part, then everything works well together, right? And so in a similar way, when we are performing our part with the different skills and abilities that we have, then the body works well together, the kingdom grows and thrives, and we're able to truly spread the kingdom out like what God is calling us to do. But when we point to ourselves as being the focal point of the skill set, then people see that and they're like, huh, well, you're kind of full of yourself. And it's not attractive, right? It doesn't bring people to Christ or bring people to the kingdom. And so in this situation, when we look at what Joseph is doing, I'd like us to take a page out of his book, reflect on our own lives, and think about what are the skills, what are the resources I have, and am I using them in the kingdom to serve and honor the Lord, or am I using them to serve and honor myself and lift myself up? So that's the challenge for you this evening, is to look into yourself, look into your lives, look into how you're handling and conducting yourself. And a lot of that comes down to your motivation, right? Is your motivation coming from a motivation of a heart of love, or is it a motivation that's coming from a motivation of selfishness and your own personal want and desire? This evening, if you have any needs of the church we can pray with you for or help you over, now's your time to come as together we stand and as we sing.